Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we'll be taking a look at the Mortal Kombat ports that were featured on the Midway Arcade Treasures compilations that were released on the 6th gen consoles. There were 3 different Midway Arcade Treasures games released, and each game focused on a different era of arcade games. The first game focused on classic arcade games from the 80s. The second game focused more on the later arcade games from the late 80s and early 90s, and it's the only game in the trilogy to get an M rating due to the inclusion of Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 and NARC. The third and final game focused on 3D racing games, while the first two included a variety of different games. I think I rambled on long enough about history. Now let's talk about the MK ports on Midway Arcade Treasures 2. Mortal Kombat 2 was the first of the 2 Mortal Kombat games that was included on Midway Arcade Treasures 2. This version uses direct emulation from the arcade version, and it's deemed to be arcade perfect, but there's some issues that keeps it from being arcade perfect. First off, all 3 versions have sound issues. The background music continues to play after you defeat Shao Kahn, and there is no music during the character cast screen during the credits. There's no way to fight smoke thanks to the pause button on this collection. The game also runs a bit faster than the arcade version, which is a lot more noticeable on the Xbox version. There's actually some players that prefer the Xbox version due to the faster gameplay than the arcade version. The PS2 and GameCube versions often slow down at the Living Forest stage. There's also some terrible audio lag in the GameCube version. This issue is also present on every game in this collection on the GameCube. Another issue that is present on all 3 versions is the character shadows flicker during gameplay. Overall, the Midway Arcade Treasures port of Mortal Kombat 2 is not arcade perfect by any means, but it's also not a bad way to play MK2. Now let's move on to MK3. Mortal Kombat 3 is another supposedly arcade perfect port in this collection, but is it really though? Let's find out. All 3 versions are nearly identical to each other. The GameCube version still has delayed sound, and was a lot more muffled than the MK2 port, but the GameCube version still plays fine enough. The background music continues to play while performing a fatality, but stops during a friendship, animality, and a babality. On the bridge stage, you will continue to hear the wind sound until you get to the continue screen or to the end of the stage. You will continue to hear the stage ending music while you pull off a stage fatality. The game is still faster than the arcade version, and is still even faster on Xbox. Gabal's name is not pronounced on the character selection screen. The shadow issues from the MK2 port are still present in this game. You won't hear the victory fanfare when you beat Shao Kahn. Instead, you will hear the Pit 3 stage music. Overall, the Midway Arcade Treasures 2 port of MK3 is still not arcade perfect, but it's not a bad way to play MK3. 1 year after the release of Midway Arcade Treasures 2, and a few months after the 3rd game, Midway Arcade Treasures Extended Play was released on the PSP, and it includes all the games from Midway Arcade Treasures 2 and the original Mortal Kombat, which wasn't originally included in the console versions. Now, let's start with the first Mortal Kombat. Man, this port is rough. Almost every glitch from the PS2 and Xbox ports from the Mortal Kombat Deception bonus disc are present. No Palace Gates music, choppy controls, delayed control just like the Xbox but worse, and this game is faster than the arcade, which can get really annoying at times. The resolution is stretched to fit the PSP screen, and there's no way to change it back to the original resolution. Surprisingly, there is no slowdown in this version, which is nice. But the main thing that really hinders this port is it only runs at 30 FPS. And this is a reoccurring problem in all 3 games in this compilation. Kano's victory yell has been replaced with Goro's roar, and Sonya only has 1 voice sample. Various intro screens are missing entirely. The Goro Live screen doesn't darken when the text appears, the throne room doesn't scroll, to the right as it should. Overall, the PSP port of the original Mortal Kombat is not the best version to play, but it's still playable. Now let's move on to MK2. Mortal Kombat 2 is the second MK game included in this collection, and this port is also not great. The controls are choppy. One sound effect is used for all the kicks and punches, with the exclusion of uppercuts and throws, as opposed to every different basic move having its own sound effect. Some intro screens seem to be missing. The tower stage does not scroll as far left and right as it should, and the floor does not scroll. The clouds in the tower stage are also missing. You can't fight Smoke or Jade in this port. If you try to fight Jade, the game freezes. Sounds seem to be cut out towards the ending seconds of a match. The main issue with this port is it has a lot of missing voice samples. Raiden only has one voice sample for his torpedo move, the other one is missing. The voices for the female characters are also missing. When you uppercut them off the pits too, they don't scream like they do in the arcade version. Some of the intro screens seem to be missing. The worst part is some of the character endings are just fucked up and don't feel right, like Liu Kang's ending, for example. I saved this for last, but the main thing that really kills this port is there are load times. They're not as bad as some of the earlier ports on CD-based hardware, but they can still be really long if you're playing on a UMD. Like, if you download the game onto a memory stick, the load times are a little bit faster. Overall, the PSP port of MK2 is an improvement from the first, but is still not great. Now let's see how MK3 turned out on PSP. Oh boy, I have a lot to say about this port. This is by far the worst version of Mortal Kombat 3 from all the Midway Arcade Treasures compilations. The load times are back, but they're nowhere near as bad as the PS1 version. All of the sound issues from Midway Arcade Treasures 2 are present, but there's more. During various parts of the ending where Shao Kahn explodes, the game freezes for half a second and the game plays the wrong track. Randomly, the game will freeze for half a second at the Pit 3 stage. Floors on the backgrounds no longer have their scrolling effects. Cabal's name is not announced on the character selection screen again. Sound glitches when loading between fights, music from the previous stage will play before going onto the proper stage music. Sounds are cut every time new characters pop up for the ending credits. Sindel's ending, the word year is cut to ye. Cabal's ending cuts after the line he will give. Sub-Zero's ending has the word his at the end on a new line. You should forget about using Robot Smoke unless you use the action replay because you will need 2 PSPs to unlock him. Also, the analog stick is glitchy and holds down direction. This is a well-known glitch in some other games as well, and is usually you would need to rotate the stick to fix it. Unfortunately, this workaround rarely works in Mortal Kombat 3. Overall, all of the ports on the PSP Midway Arcade Treasures compilations were not that great, but the MK3 port is by far the worst port, and I would recommend avoiding this port at all costs. The last compilation I would like to mention before I end the video is Midway Arcade Treasures Deluxe Edition for the PC. This is the best Midway Arcade Treasures compilation, if you ignore the horrible and useless protection this compilation has. The game includes all the games from Midway Arcade Treasures 2 and 3 plus Mortal Kombat 1. At first, all the Mortal Kombat games included in this collection have all the same glitches that were included on Midway Arcade Treasures 2 and the MK Deception bonus disc. The fans were starting to get pissed off about the glitches, so that forced Midway to release 2 patches to fix some of the glitches for these games. When playing the original Mortal Kombat, the missing and glitchy sounds were still here, but the slowdown was gone in this port. Sometimes, mostly when you play on the Palace Gate stage, the music will just switch into the Courtyards one, This version of MK1 is way better than the ports that are released on the PS2, PSP, and Xbox, but it's not better than the arcade version. The port of Mortal Kombat 2 is completely identical with the one that appeared in Midway Arcade Treasures 2. Every single glitch / different that exists there is here too, except the slowdowns. The game is still faster than the arcade, but now it's way more acceptable. You can configure a pad for these games, but the only annoying thing is you would have to configure it separately for every single game. This compilation has potential, of course, but it's not better than the arcade version in any way. At last, MK3. Again, no slowdowns, which is nice. As for the gameplay, it's still like the Midway Arcade Treasures versions. When playing this compilation, don't forget to install the patches first to skip some of the sound issues. Overall, Midway Arcade Treasures Deluxe Edition has the best versions of these games on these compilations. I would recommend installing the patches to have the best experience with these games. In conclusion, the Midway Arcade Treasures ports of Mortal Kombat do have some issues, but they're still playable. They're not necessarily the best way to experience the classic MK trilogy, but it's still a good way to play classic Mortal Kombat, like if you never tried any of the games in the franchise, or if you only have the 6th gen consoles, except the PSP ports. Those ports are not good, and I would recommend avoiding those ports. Until next time, thanks for watching.